It has finally started. Yes, my friends, the knockout stages, are officially known as the round of 16, has started. France defeated Argentina with 4-3 goals and Portugal got defeated by Uruguay with 2-1 goals. Both matches were bang on. And with today is the second day of the knockout stages where Spain will face Russia and Croatia will face Denmark. But before going into more details about today's matches, I, Kousiki, your host for tonight, have brought our very own FIFA expert Ranabir with me today on Googly Goals, brought to you by Googly Mania. But before getting into today's matches, let's know a little about from Ranabir about last night's match between Uruguay and Portugal. Well, Ranabir, starting with the very obvious question, how did you feel about the match? How was the match?
Well, going into the results, Cristiano Ronaldo is no more in the World Cup itself.
Unfortunately.
And all Messi fans will be pretty happy as far as the memes are concerned. But definitely going into the match itself, well, probably the match didn't go into that level which we saw between the match between France and Argentina. Portugal played well. Many of my friends have been saying that, well, probably both the teams were too defensive. But you know, the style of play is something which you can't change. And
Absolutely.
Portugal, in all probability, they didn't have enough firepower. And football, obviously, is a team game. And you can't expect Cristiano Ronaldo to do everything. Be a role playing the role of a playmaker, or scoring goals, or coming into the defense altogether. But it was an interesting match altogether. And probably 70% of the match, it was all about Portuguese players coming up front to the penalty box itself, and the defense led by Diego Godin of the Uruguayan defense standing solid in front of the Uruguayan goalkeeper. And that's how the match happened, and we didn't see the late surge from the Portuguese team. And it was rather end when we saw Ronaldo losing his patience and getting a yellow card when the referee didn't give a free kick when Quaresma was blocked just beside the Uruguayan penalty box. But the match was interesting, and when Pepe scored the goal itself with a cracking header, I thought that probably this match will be going down the wires, or we can see an extra time for the first time in this year's World Cup. But when Edinson Cavani carried his scintillating form, which we have seen for PSG, when he scored that goal itself, probably one of the contenders as goal of the tournament, it was all over. And Portugal, after that, never really threatened. And probably they missed good players, star players, which are not they're having right now. And it was all upon young players, and it was asking too much from them, like Guedes, Cedric Soares and William Carvalho. These young players coming up, and Cristiano Ronaldo himself was disappointing to some extent. He couldn't deliver with the free kick, and there were loads of missed passes altogether. And obviously, Uruguay had none other than Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani. Although Cavani was injured in between and he was replaced, still he scored 2 blistering goals, and probably that was the main reason why he was awarded man of the match for yesterday's match. But it was all over for Portugal when Cavani scored that goal itself. It was against the run of play, and the coach of the Portuguese team, Santos, was well aware of the limitations of his team, and probably he was relying too much from the Portuguese defense, which managed to remain undefeated in the Euro Cup. But that wasn't the case in this World Cup altogether. And as far as fitness is concerned, yes, the Portuguese players were good, but in the defense, they had players like Jose Fonte, Pepe. These players, they're probably not in the right frame of body because they are aging. So that's one of the main reasons why didn't we find good performances from the Portuguese players against the champion Uruguayan team.
Well, we all know there's a deep chemistry between Luis Suarez and Edinson Cavani, which actually led the Uruguay's team to victory. Well, what do you have to say about that?
Well, see, these two players, they are world-class strikers. They don't play together. Luis Suarez plays along with Messi in Barcelona team, whereas Edinson Cavani plays in PSG along with Kylian Mbappe and Neymar. Obviously, you guys must be knowing who Kylian Mbappe. We saw him scoring a brace against Messi's Argentina, and the way he gave an assist in the first goal itself. It wasn't an assist, it was a penalty, and Griezmann scored with that. So these players, they don't get to play together, but we have seen that whenever they are playing together, they gel well. And especially the last 30 minutes yesterday, when Cavani wasn't there in the field itself, Luis Suarez was spectacular in the hold-up play. He was right there in the Portuguese penalty box itself, and there were always 3 defenders with him, and that actually helped with the numbers. We saw that Uruguay conceded the first goal of the World Cup yesterday, and probably they have one of the best defense in this whole World Cup. So having such players of the caliber of Luis Suarez or Edinson Cavani, they give you that sort of liberty to go up front or to have defense so well. And yes, we have been talking about the 2 world-class goals scored by Edinson Cavani, but let's not forget that Luis Suarez assisted in both the cases, especially in the first one. The cross itself is because the first goal itself, Luis Suarez coming from the left flank, the pinpointed cross, and Cavani waited for that, and with that sort of header, we expect these players, top players, to perform in such big platform as World Cup. So it was expected from them, but rather I think probably they were not marked well. It was to some extent Santos, the coach of the Portuguese team, must be ringing about whether the Portuguese defenders rightly marked Edinson Cavani, because in the second goal itself, it was an open net altogether, and it was a good counter attack. Luis Suarez that time coming from the right flank itself, giving the pass itself, and Edinson Cavani, champion player, didn't miss his chances, because in these big matches, especially the knockout matches, you need to give your 200%, and these 2 players gave their best. And it's for the first time we are seeing together playing such well for the Uruguayan team. Previously also, in case of Copa America and other international tournaments, we have seen, and probably this is one of the main reasons why I am pretty hopeful that in the quarterfinals, when Uruguay will be playing against France, Didier Deschamps will be having tough time, because these 2 players up front can give good amount of pressure to the France midfield, which includes Matuidi, Conte, and Paul Pogba and others. So it's going to be a hell of a match. We have to wait for a few days for that.
Well, enough of the past. Let's talk about today's match between Spain and Russia. But before that, let's take a short break. Stay tuned with us. We will be right back.
जिक्र जब भी जीएसटी की होती है तो नजरें ढूंढती हैं जीएसटी दोस्त विकास धनानिया को।
नमस्कार विकास जी, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आने के लिए।
विकास धनानिया बात करते हैं पूरी जिम्मेदारी के साथ
कि यहाँ पर गुड्स को रिसीव्ड नहीं किया गया है। हाँ, लेकिन तब आपको ये प्रूफ करना पड़ेगा कि भाई हमने तो हैंड रिक्शा से मंगा लिया है।
आम आदमी जीएसटी को जानना चाहता है, लिहाजा सवालों का अंबार है। इन्हीं सवालों को समेटते हैं हमारे होस्ट राकेश। हर ट्यूसडे और फ्राइडे रात 8 बजे होस्ट राकेश और दोस्त विकास धनानिया हो जाते हैं आमने सामने, सिर्फ आपके लिए जियो बांग्ला पर। देखिए जीएसटी की बात दोस्त के साथ जियो बांग्ला पर।
Well, we are back again as promised after the short break, and we were discussing about today's knockout round match between Spain and Russia. Well, let's know more about it from Ranabir. Well, Ranabir, on one hand there's the host nation Russia, and on the other the 2010 champion Spain, waiting eagerly to fight each other to reach the quarterfinals. Which team do you think will be able to reach the quarterfinals?
Well, both the teams qualified for the knockout round in contrasting ways. In case of host Russia, they were rather in, I won't say the easy group altogether, but they were lucky to get a group which consisted of teams like Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Saudi Arabia, although they won their last game against Egypt, they were pretty lackluster in the very first match itself. We saw how Russia won the match with 5 goals, and in the very next match, when the team played against Egypt, they also won comfortably. And in the very last match, Russia lost against Uruguay, and they looked clueless against the pair of Suarez and Cavani. So it it's yet to be tested whether they have the team combination of Cheryshev, Golovin, Akinfeev, all these players, whether they have the mettle to perform against the top teams. That is something pretty important. Now, if you look at how Spain qualified into the knockout round, when Spain played their first match against Portugal itself, it was a scintillating match, 3-3 match. But what importantly, the Spanish defense leaked 3 goals, and we definitely remember how Piqué tripped Cristiano Ronaldo in front of the penalty box during the last few minutes itself. So 3 goals, a champion team, a team which has got so many star players, conceding 3 goals in a match against Portugal team, which was never at all a pretty good team altogether, barring Cristiano Ronaldo. And the very last match, when Spain was playing against Morocco altogether, Morocco looked far better, and I guess so many Spanish fans who are watching this will be having the same opinion about that. And Spain was virtually overplayed by the Moroccan players, and the goal which at all helped Spain to draw the match itself, it was also debatable, and there was VAR and others. I'm not going into that debate, but overall I can say the Spanish defense didn't look comfortable, and that is one thing I think the Spanish coach Fernando Hierro is definitely looking into that. Don't forget that the Spanish coach Lopetegui, he was removed before the start of the World Cup itself, because it was disclosed that he is going to take charge of Real Madrid after the World Cup itself. So it was a big setback for the team altogether. So as far as team combination is concerned, they are not going to experiment with players. They have considered players like Sergio Ramos, someone like Piqué in the back, and obviously David Gea, the goalkeeper of the Spanish team. There have been calls whether he should be replaced or not. Well, we have seen him performing well when he has been playing for Manchester United for the past few seasons. He has been spectacular. But in this World Cup itself, he hasn't been effective. Rather, I would say that we haven't been seeing such good, solid performances from him. And that is one thing I guess the Spanish team will be definitely looking. So the match will be decided how the Russian forward players are going to play against the Spanish defense. Because we expect the Spanish team to get that sort of 70-30 possession, because that is how tiki-taka is all about. But I feel the players like Thiago Aspas, Iniesta, Busquets, and obviously Isco has been the main driving force for the Spanish midfield, and Diego Costa's role is going to be very important. In the first 2 matches itself, he was very effective, and he's muscular, and he's someone who gets with the defenders altogether and bullies them altogether. But in the last match against Morocco, we saw that the Moroccan defenders, they were pretty planned how to tackle Diego Costa. So that is something I guess when Russian players are going to be pretty well prepared. But definitely it's going to be difficult for Russia, because they have got a bunch of pretty young players, and probably they don't have that much of experience or stamina. But you know, when you're playing as the host itself, you have the support of people, and side by side people are also expecting things from you. So the hosts will obviously, they have to prove that they're hosts, and after all, you know, the Russia started within this year's World Cup. So I won't say that this is a very tough match for Spain, but definitely you cannot say that easily that Spain will be simply defeating the Russians that easily. It's never going to be a one-sided match, especially this Russia versus Spain.
Well, talking about Spain, well, in the group league matches, Spain, the Spanish defense was actually vulnerable. Well, what do you think? Will the Russian players be able to exploit that factor, the vulnerability?
Well, that actually
factor?
depends on what sort of team Spain played against in the group league itself. Now, in all probability, I will never say that this Russia team is much better than Portugal or Morocco or Iran. Rather, it's difficult to compare, because the style of play is very different. The Russian players, you know, they have got that flavor of how they do the European players. You run fast, you give passes all together. It's very different from how Portugal played or Asian teams play or something. So that is something, but obviously the Russian team had good preparation for the last few days, and they must have seen, they analyzed the videos all together, how the Spanish team has played, and they must have keenly noticed that 2 players, especially Sergio Ramos and Gerard Piqué. Gerard Piqué, we know, he has been playing for Barcelona, and Sergio Ramos was for Real Madrid, and both of them are probably not in the best form of their life. And that is something, I guess, Golovin and Cheryshev has been one of the key players for Russia. He's definitely going to exploit that. So midfield will be a key position, and probably the fate of this match will be decided in the midfield today.
Well, which players according to you might turn out to be as key players for the match?
Well, certainly this is the last World Cup for Andres Iniesta. He has been the maestro, and he plays so well. So he is going to be the bandmaster for the Spanish midfield. And obviously, I think along with him, Isco's role is going to be pretty important. And as far as substitutions are concerned, Asensio, whom we have seen pretty well playing for Real Madrid, he can be pretty effective. Obviously, role of Busquets is going to be important because he is someone who comes from the flanks itself and gives good passes. And if you talk about other young players, David Silva, whom we have seen pretty good form playing with Man City, is also another key player because these are sort of players whom we call that they are the ones who are the pillars of those passing football, what Spain has come about, or we have seen Pep Guardiola's Barcelona has played in the last decade. So the Spanish midfield, these players, especially Iniesta and Isco, these two players are going to be very important. But as far as goal scoring options are concerned, I think the Spanish team will be dependent on someone like Diego Costa. Yes, they have got other forward players as well, like Aspas, but probably they don't have that sort of international experience. As far as Russia is concerned, it all depends upon Akinfeev. It's a pretty good goalkeeper, and Golovin's role is going to be very important because we have seen how he goes and puts the goals in set piece moments, and the Spanish team looks pretty vulnerable in case of set piece moments, especially free kicks outside the penalty box itself. And there we can see the Russian players can definitely exploit such situations in the match itself. So it's definitely going to be an evenly balanced match today.
And well, the obvious question that I have to ask, what do you think about the scoreline?
Well, it's too early to say that is this will an open match. By an open match, you mean that both the teams attacking each other, and the first 20-30 minutes is going to be very important. Russia will definitely try to score an early goal because in these sort of knockout matches, you are not actually pretty sure whether this match will be going towards extra time or tiebreaker. But definitely, being a keen football enthusiast, I don't want the fate of the match to be decided in tiebreaker because it's all about luck at that moment. But definitely, Spain is to some extent well ahead of Russia. Let's not forget that Russia has got the lowest FIFA ranking coming into the teams who are playing in this World Cup. So a 2-0 victory for Spain is something we can definitely expect. But I would love to see the hosts coming up. Already we are not going to see teams like Argentina, teams like Portugal, or teams like Germany anymore. So if Spain crashes out today, well, there will be so many supporters saying the remaining teams, the smaller teams, are going to then make the most of this year's World Cup. So my vote is definitely for Spain, but I would love to see inspiring performances from the young Russian players.
Well, thank you, Ranabir, for your expertise on the match. Well, and with that, we come to the end of today's live show. May the best team win and qualify to the quarterfinals. Well, you too can tell about your match predictions to us in the comment section. Like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep watching Googly Mania. This is Kousiki signing off.